based here in London. And it is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Hany who is manager of news output at Al Jazeera English. And so from the oldest to the newest kid on the block. Dr. Hany will be speaking about media strategies covering and transforming the region. As you all know, after the Arab Spring, Al Jazeera was the brand name that introduced the entire world to the huge transition taking place in the Middle East. And it led to you finally having your station in the United States. So, you still have one in the UK? Oh, you don't, yes. So, I look forward to hearing from Dr. Hany.
Thank you very much.
No, up to you.
All right, thank you very much for coming in. I'm really honored to be, not only to be invited to attend the World Islamic Economic Forum, the week IEF, but also to be a speaker here. Actually, I'm given the opportunity to address and discuss with you a few ideas, views of about a very vital and significant subject, which is in many ways underlies the main theme of the forum, which is changing world, new relationships. As media, with its new and rapidly evolving faces, platforms, and dynamics, has become a key player in changing the dynamics and the perception and the understanding of our world and the relationships that govern the movement and the dynamics of this world. Let me first of all give you a little bit, a very short hint about my background. My name is Hany. I'm holding the position of manager of news output on Al Jazeera network, which is a 24/7 news channel based in Doha with broadcast centers in America and London. My main job is to be the person who is editorially in charge of what you see on the screen, kind of the person who decides the news agenda on a day-to-day basis and make sure that we are up to our standards and quality. I'm originally from Egypt, but I'm a British citizen. I've lived in the UK for most of the last 20 years or so. Now I'm based in Doha and do a lot of traveling to London instead. The media and the news media has always been my favorite area. I hold a PhD in mass communication and TV journalism, so I've studied different stages, several in Egypt, in the Middle East, in America, and in London. The media studies, and I took it as my career until I'm here with you as a manager of news output in Al Jazeera English. I will just now can start the presentation. Very much I'd like to have it in a kind of a dialogue, so allow me to have the first half of it, hopefully less than 30 minutes, as a presentation, including the videos I will be showing you. And the second half, I'm more than happy to take any questions, will be kind of Q&A. This will be the best way to have this kind of dialogue with communication. We are communicators, so we should have two-way communication. Hopefully very. So, one of the very common quotes or sayings is knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. Can anyone in this room contest this? Knowledge is power? It is power. And the news media is all about providing knowledge, information. So in a way, the main function or task of a media organization, especially in the news business, is to provide its audience with information, with updated news, reliable news, to make them more aware of what's happening around them. For us, who work in the media, information is the currency we use on a day-to-day basis to build our brand and help our audience. More and more young people who are bombarded by information from social media and other sources especially in the last few years, say they do not need real news. That choice to remain uninformed could be very dangerous and could have damaging effects not only on the media industry but also on the society as a whole. All of us probably remember a time when we didn't care about interest rates or global diplomacy, and that likely changed when it was the time to buy a new home, and then you need information, you need knowledge to make the right decision. So that's where the power of media comes. If today's young people, young generation, choose not to be informed or not to follow the news, the same way the ancestors did, the risk is making bad decisions, wrong decisions. Lots of examples I can give you. If you are making a move to a neighborhood, and you want to make a choice, you're not following the news, you don't know anything about the crime rate in this neighborhood, then you might understand that very, very late what was the risk of not getting the right information at that point. Politicians always and very cleverly manipulate their constituency, the people who vote for them. And without the kind of right information, right knowledge about who is running for the next election in the news and in all news sources, none of the voters will be able to make the right decision to choose who stands for them in the next elections. So there's lots of examples here that I can go through about why news is very important, not only in terms of knowing about what's happening outside the world, outside or in our society, but also to make the right decisions on a day-to-day basis. The latest Pew Research survey in America showed that while young people spend half the time on news at their parents or grandparents, they are still devoting at least 45 minutes per day for news. So they're not turning it off totally, as several other journalists or writers would suggest. Real news can be delivered, but it has to be quicker. As things stand, the 18 to 31 age group gets most of its news from the internet. And this is a very interesting point here, because just in the very early introduction to this position, I was talking about the changing dynamics. Everything is changing currently in the news business. The social media, the technology of the new technologies have definitely affected the way that we consume information through the news channels. However, the traditional, what we keep saying, the traditional media, like TV, radio, and the print, is still alive and kicking. It's still a very reliable source of information. I hope you realize this. Most of you will realize what's this about. It's about Syria's war. This photo. It's a current. I'm using this as a current example of power of the media. Dozens of loosely affiliated armed groups fighting in Syria, with all the headlines all over the media talking about rebel groups versus government troops, and probably missing the real story. The real story is about the millions of Syrians who have been caught in the crossfire of fighting between the two sides, and the millions who have been made homeless within and beyond Syria's borders. And so a picture like this surfaces all the social media and the traditional media. This was taken on the 21st of August this year. These men were victims of a chemical weapons attack that was carried out by the Syrian government forces. But it was images like this one which jolted international politicians into action. A preliminary report by the US government revealed at least 400 out of the 1,400 deaths were children. The US government was forced to rely on the same activist sources, networks that we have been using throughout the two almost 2.5 years of covering the story in Syria. So what is Al Jazeera? What's Al Jazeera network? I'd like to very quickly introduce what Al Jazeera stands for before we the first video. Al Jazeera is a media network based in the Middle East, in Doha, the headquarters, and as I mentioned earlier, there with broadcasting centers in other parts of the world. We have up to probably around 50 news and offices around the world. But it's not about the resources that Al Jazeera has or that spread over the world. It's about the ethics and the principles that Al Jazeera stand for. We do challenge the popular narrative and offer a fresh perspective on news and current affairs. Actually, in November, this coming very probably to this time, this coming month, in November, will mark 17 years since the launch of the network. In this short time, we have become an influential brand, consistently setting the agenda and giving a voice to the voiceless. This is one of our main mottos. We do give voice to the voiceless. There are in many parts of the world, it's so easy to get men in suit like me on the media and appearing all the time, making the statements. This is the way that many other media networks would cover the news. We do it differently. We approach the news differently. We try to get to those who do not usually have the voice in the media, slums, poor areas, underdeveloped areas, and we try hard to get to them and listen to their voices and reflect it on our coverage.
Al Jazeera.
I'll just let you have a quick view of this video that will show you in a way how Al Jazeera have developed. Can you?
1999, it became a 24-hour news network. By 2006, its English channel launched with more than 60 bureaus around the world.
It's November the 15th, day one of a new era in television news.
In an undersea HD fiber connecting 4 news centers in Doha, London, Kuala Lumpur, and Washington, D.C. When Al Jazeera Balkans went to air in 2011, field teams were using innovative technologies to record, feed, and produce lives.
This is the first ever news hour from Al Jazeera America. Welcome, everyone.
And as Al Jazeera America joins, the network is employing a multimedia approach across all channels. Historical perspective.
What Al Jazeera is doing is vicious, inaccurate, and inexcusable.
The audience has grown, and it can be an important means of communication in the world. And I'm delighted you're doing what you're doing.
Like it or hate it, it is really effective. And in fact, viewership of Al Jazeera is going up in the United States because it's real news.
Al Jazeera English. The channel aims to focus the human side of the story by combining politics, technology, and media analysis through a mixture of traditional journalism and new outreach mediums. The network challenged a popular narrative in Afghanistan and Iraq, where it was subject to attacks, criticism, and distrust by government and corporations alike. Multiple news gathering teams in every region across the world give us the flexibility to cover dozens of stories simultaneously by sharing content and information through the internet. It's all filtered through a team of editors and content managers in Doha and shared across multiple TV, radio, and online platforms. Diverse and comprehensive.
I contribute as equally as I consume.
Over 1 billion minutes spent online. Al Jazeera's rise. During the Arab uprising, Al Jazeera's multi-skilled teams updated information around the clock across all platforms.
For Azizi was a simple and modest man. His family, prayed, has given birth to a nation's freedom.
Giving voice to the voiceless and the rest of the world. Libya and the death of Gaddafi. News of Gaddafi's death quickly went viral, Social media reported unverifiable gossip and uploaded fake still photos which were broadcast on multiple news channels. Al Jazeera held back. It was a nerve-wracking time, but it paid off when one of our team's inserts called in with mobile phone footage of the moment Muammar Gaddafi was killed. Iran, new leadership. New President Hassan Rouhani was directing viewers to watch his inauguration live on Al Jazeera. That was being tweeted during the ceremony despite refusing visas for our teams to cover the event. As quantified in a new Nielsen study, increased Twitter chatter means more viewers are tuning in. Egypt's coup and crackdown.
مؤسسة الرئاسة منذ شهر نوفمبر الماضي 2012 بدأت بالدعوة لحوار وطني.
This is civil distress. They will remain.
When the news breaks and the story builds,
MNF snipers are firing down the streets.
when people need to be heard,
The time has come for them to be able to have a say on the future of Catalonia.
and the story needs to be told.
Jose Antonio was shot to death right on this street corner. The FBI have refused to share that surveillance video.
Al Jazeera has teams on the ground to bring you more award-winning documentaries and live news on air and online.
We go to where few dare to venture.
So that's a gesture of what Al Jazeera do really across the world. It's a global news channel, that's it. And what really makes us different is the news values we stand for, the approach, the way we do the news. From Japan's earthquake and tsunami to the world's newest nation, South Sudan, to the birth of 7 billion child, 2011 was an incredible news year. I think we've gained our best time as a news channel during the Arab Spring. I was personally in charge of a team covering the early stages of the Arab Spring in Tunisia and then in Egypt. And this was by far a very interesting, outstanding time for a journalist to be on the ground at this time, with literally people taken to the streets with no leadership. Basically people who are protesting against a long time of dictatorship, oppression, and other reasons they went to the streets, not exactly knowing what's next, but it was the emotions leading them to do that. However, it was I got an opportunity to Al Jazeera as a news channel to make the print, to prove they are ahead of all other channels. We do believe that we are the leaders in terms of news channels in the region. We are based there, and we are the best people to know the story there. And we've allocated all our resources just to make sure that we are ahead of all our competitors. And because we by news events, there was no way to keep our usual programming, the usual schedule of the day. So we went rolling for almost 8 or 9 weeks. We were able to provide continuous and unrivaled coverage of events across the region because of our commitment to telling people stories. Our base in the Middle East would give us, as I said, a unique advantage, and our commitment to changing the popular narrative means we go beyond the very usual angry man or men with beard caricature that others often see when reporting in this region. Before Al Jazeera, there was only state media across the region, the Middle East and North Africa. Many nations worked hard to keep us out of their countries in order to control the message. Those governments didn't plan for the social media phenomenon, which is where the millions pushing for change organized themselves and got their message out regardless of state censorship. Despite officials stopping our crews from crossing borders and accessing events, we developed a range of mechanisms and technologies to allow individuals to send us material in real time. I know we've seen a bit about the Gaddafi story, and I'm just trying to make it a focus of a good example of how we operate differently. Citizen journalism, what we call citizen journalism, and social media, which I mean the day-to-day, daily photos or news that's sent by normal people, average people from all over the world, to surfacing all the social media networks, Twitter, Facebook, and so on. They do play a huge role these days in everything we do now. And we do, as broadcasters, we do not just take whatever is on the social media, and someone will tweet something and just put it on air. It is our responsibility, and that's what makes a news service, a broadcaster, different from an activist or a citizen journalist, as we call it. It's our duty, our responsibility to verify, to authenticate news lines, to authenticate information, to authenticate pictures before putting them on air. And this is what happened with the Gaddafi, and that's why we gained 13.4 million views, because we were the first to bring out the pictures of his final moments, and to have a reliable video that has been, and still I think, the most viewed YouTube clip on Jazeera. Since we are talking about we're taking MENA, the Middle East and North Africa, as our example for how we are covering the news and how powerful the media is, Egypt could be the best example for us. Egypt is the largest and arguably most influential country in the region. So from food insecurity to allegations of vote rigging to military takeovers, we have and continue to cover every important development with all resources available to us in Egypt. It has become much more difficult in recent months. We've gone from a very revered and respected network to perhaps most persecuted. Our journalists face intimidation, harassment, and detention as they attempt to do their jobs. This has posed obvious challenges, of course, for us. Still, we remain committed to cover the story and to do our job up to our news values and principles. But we had to change tactics. We have to make use of the technology. There are lots of innovations in the technology that allow us now to be on the ground. I remember very much someone, without mentioning him, an official who I was in Egypt, and he was telling me, how come your bureau has been shut down? You have no reporters on the ground. How come we still see these live pictures? How do you do this? How come you're still live from this area or that area? And the answer is very simple. We are using technology. We are taking advantage of the development in the technology of communication and making the best use of it. Not to, as some would say, to enforce or push for a certain political agenda, but more to cover the truth, to cover the story from different sides, and allow our viewers to make up their minds, to make the point out of the stories we cover. I will show another video with more focus on how we're covering Egypt, and to give you a little bit of a better understanding of how we operate in very different circumstances and challenges.
Heard that ballots were being stuffed with fraudulent votes, they stormed the polling station, threw the ballot boxes outside, and set them on fire. This footage allegedly shows several people filling out fake ballots. Al Jazeera could not independently verify the authenticity of these pictures. Egypt's High Elections Commission acknowledged some irregularities and violence, but said despite canceling Sunday's vote at a few polling stations, the elections were a success, and the results will undoubtedly stand once announced. No one in Egypt doubts who's going to win the majority of the seats, but the question is, what does it mean for the future of Egypt and its civil society, which have had to endure the rule of the National Democratic Party for the past 30 years, and will have to do so for at least another 5.
A street battle erupts outside a polling station. The men throwing stones are from rival factions within the ruling party. Some voters braved it through the battle, only to be turned away at the door of the polling station. Elsewhere, voting was more orderly, but in some places, polling stations opened late, which is against the rules.
It's this use of the mosques and infrastructure, political network, that makes the Muslim Brotherhood so powerful. It's also this combining of religion and politics that infuriates the authorities.
I have seen that it is required to delegate the powers of and authorities of the president to the vice president as per the constitution.
But even that wasn't enough to save Hosni Mubarak. The protests on the street were too loud, too large to ignore.
It was what they prayed for so long. And as they rose up, came the news the president had stepped down. Euphoria, tears, and disbelief.
Liberation Square, 3 weeks of protests that have brought down a 30-year-old presidency.
To the sign of the times, dozens of policemen occupy a square in central Cairo in protest. Pledging allegiance to Egypt, some trying to distance themselves from the deaths of hundreds of pro-democracy protesters.
Talk about a changing Egypt. In what was once a police state, it's now the police that are protesting and staging strikes demanding their rights.
Tahrir Square, the scene of Egypt's revolution little over 2 years ago, erupted. Once again, a movement sparked by the country's youth has led to the overthrow of a leader. And demonstrators listened where they could to hear the Minister of Defense.
The Chief Justice of the Supreme Constitutional Court will run the state's affairs in the interim period and until a new president is elected.
But in Nasser City, where supporters of Mohamed Morsi had gathered in their thousands, there was anger and frustration. Many here, after hearing Morsi was out, swore an oath to protect their country.
Hundreds of people have come to see the devastation for themselves, many of them taking pictures with their phones, and most of them are residents of the local area.
And it is striking how little sympathy any of these people have for those who lost their lives during the course of Wednesday's operation.
The Al Jazeera network has been one of the most targeted. Our offices have been raided several times, equipment confiscated, and satellite signals jammed. Among those arrested, Al Jazeera reporter Abdullah Al-Shami and cameraman Mohammed Badir. They are still being detained in Abu Zabal prison pending charges of attacking police officers and public property.
Hosni Mubarak was ordered released by a court pending investigation into a case to do with claims the former president received gifts from state-run publisher Al-Ahram.
There's a general feeling here that so much is going on in the country. What happens to Hosni Mubarak is pretty irrelevant. After so many of his inner circle have been released, whether happy or sad, people are not surprised by this verdict.
So from the, just seeing the video, we've been telling the story of Egypt for the last 8 years in different phases. We've been perceived and seen as sitting on one side of the story. Prior to 2011, we were being very much criticized by the Mubarak regime as being troublemakers. Then between 2011 and 2013, we were very much seen as on the side of the regime, which is the Muslim Brotherhood dominated regime. And 2013, when Morsi was overthrown, we were again seen as troublemakers. It's not about being on this side or that side for us. It's about we have always been siding with the people, with reflecting what the people are saying on different sides. And pictures like the few pictures that you've seen towards the end of the video that would had put us in trouble and led to our views to be closed down and our reporters being chased down and arrested. But this is just an example of how a news channel has the responsibility and the duty to cover a story from different angles, from different levels, with whatever sacrifices, whatever challenges they have to deal with. They have to stand up their values, news values, and their principles. The power of the media and power of the news media comes from the setting the news agenda, which people would watch the news, and it's us who will decide which story goes first, what would make a hit story, which line of the story would go first, which part of the story will be highlighted versus other parts. And setting the news agenda makes the point about how powerful the media is. The following quote, as you can probably read, highlights how greater choice in the media industry does not guarantee diversity. It's a Malouf, a novelist and kind of philosopher. So people sometimes imagine that just because of the access they have to so many newspapers, radio and TV channels, they will get an infinity of different opinions. Then they discover that things are just the opposite. The power of those loudspeakers only amplifies the opinion prevalent at a certain time, to the point where it covers or overtakes any other opinion. Very much true. And that's why Al Jazeera UK is soon to join the network, in order to allow us to produce and broadcast our unique brand of news and current affairs to a wider UK audience. Earlier this year, Al Jazeera America launched from New York, giving us a platform and the busiest TV market in the world. Now we are focused on adding more localized channels to allow us to tailor programming specifically to regional preferences. We do have Al Jazeera Turk, Al Jazeera Balkans, by the way, as well. Our approach to issues and stories remains the same wherever we are, giving voice to the voiceless, telling stories from a human perspective, and aiming to challenge the status quo. We'll be focusing on Britain's new social realities as economic challenges change the country forever, when we are hopefully will be launching the Al Jazeera UK later this year. And just before I shut up and allow you to ask questions if you want, I picked a few quotes just to ponder and think about, which I think very much reflect the worries about the power of the media and the news. TV news is what you want to be. Sorry, TV news is what you want it to be. And if you want it to be different, take a look at what you watch. No one wants to hear the truth if it isn't what they want to hear. Television is the most perfect democracy. You sit there with your remote control and vote. And as a newsmaker, media people, we are in the business of gathering the news. We are not in the business of talking about the news, as many people do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take the chairman's prerogative and ask an initial question, hopefully the difficult one, out first. Just focusing on the Egypt question, there's been an accusation that Al Jazeera and Al Jazeera Mubashara in particular has been consistent in one thing, and that's supporting the Muslim Brotherhood. So I guess the question is, how do you deal with that accusation? Particularly in the sense that, well, my second question then is, were you critical of the Muslim Brotherhood regime?
Very much this is what we hear all the time, about all the criticism about the Jazeera, the agenda, which side you are on. And on purpose we pick the coverage of Al Jazeera of Egypt over a long period of time rather than just the last year or 2 years. And that I've just mentioned, there's nothing like Al Jazeera would sit on one side of the story. They've always covered what happens on the ground from different perspectives, different angles. I do very much understand all the criticism that dropped in the media about Al Jazeera Mubashir, which I'm not here to talk about Al Jazeera Mubashir in Masr. It's one of the channels that belong to the network. But generally speaking, the Al Jazeera news channels, whether Arabic, Mubashir, or English, they don't have any political agenda setting. There is no agenda in what they do. They all get what their main aim is to cover the story as it happens. And I can give you tons of examples of stories that we did with reflecting on voices and critics of Muslim Brotherhood. I remember we did 2 or 3 stories very recently about the attacks on the churches, which was implying that the pro-Muslim Brotherhood Islamists have been part of attacks on the Copts in Egypt. So I would very much challenge this, I would say, groundless criticism in many cases.
I'll open up to questions. Can I have a first question?
My name is Pamela Courtin. I'm a writer, and I've been writing about and a journalist.
So there's a microphone.
Sorry, thank you. My name is Pamela Smith. I'm a writing journalist. I've been covering Islamic finance in the Middle East for about 30 years. When I wrote a piece on Islamic banking here in the UK for the Times newspaper earlier this year, I and a couple of others felt it was important to stress the role of Islamic finance as part of a larger ethical finance approach, and one that can be seen as important globally, whether it's in London or Malaysia or Dubai or wherever. I would simply say that I now run my own boutique consultancy on a media presentation. We're doing a big supplement in the International Herald Tribune. It's now the New York Times, I'm sorry to say. Early next year on Islamic finance, including sukuk and Islamic banking and ethical products and so forth, halal. It is just extremely important for everyone in the industry to realize that at the end of the day, it's the consumer out there, not just the corporates, but the consumer who will, whether they're Muslim or non-Muslim, will realize that Islamic products are ethical, because there is a vast, demand for that out there. And if I can help any of you, please contact me. I'm here.
Thanks for the call.
Thanks, yeah. I'm not sure if you want to engage with that. You know where the lady is. Any other questions? Lady at the front. There's a microphone following you. This way, sorry.
You next.
Oh, wait.
Hi, you talked about when your bureau was closed down in Egypt, how you still managed to transmit the news. What you talked about new innovations that enabled you to do that. Could you expand a bit on what those technologies are?
I mean, in the old days there was this big, huge trucks that would with the big dish on top of it to send to send a signal from wherever place. I was a reporter in the days when you literally to feed 2-3 minute piece of news, you have to go to just one place. Cairo was just one place, which is the Egyptian Radio and Television Union, to feed the tape with a tape as big as this. Things have changed dramatically over the last, I would say, 10 years. We came to a point now that with my iPhone, I can go live stream as we are speaking now. I can just hit a button and we are live, and can be received through our broadcast center in Doha and put on air as we speak now. So that's how the technology. There are lots of names for brands that the beacon was kind of revolution in the terms of transmission. You don't need that big antenna as before, just to have a very small antenna linked to the satellite. Literally the size of a phone, a mobile phone, that links you to the satellite, and you just start speaking or have it on focused on one of the photo, and you just go live and transmit that. So the technology has shrank in size, but become much more efficient in terms of live transmission, and that's what we're taking advantage of. That's what we're using and covering stories. It's becoming very difficult now for a news channel like Jazeera or even CNN or whatever the international news broadcaster is to operate in a country like Egypt, or sometimes in other countries where you are literally chased by security. You're not allowed to work. Every time you go to do an interview on the street, or even cover the very basic things, they will tell you you have a permission for that. And whatever permits you give them, you're still not allowed. So just using technology to do that.
How easy is it to intercept and block that technology?
It's always the case when technology comes out, then they will find a way to block it, and then something new, like the software on the iPhone, it keeps updating new software, so you can always find a way around. I very much remember this just a good example of how things have been changing. I was in Egypt, as I said, in 2011, at the time when 25th of January happened, and we were arrested. I was the team leader, or I was leading a team of almost 25 journalists. We were arrested, and we were taken to one of the army checkpoints. And at that time, we were still live from Free Square. And the main session of the officer who was interrogating us was asking, his main question was, we have shut down your offices. The whole team is here. How come you're still up there? And the fact that doesn't realize that you don't need to go to the Egyptian radio and television center to broadcast. A very small antenna somewhere can link you to the satellite and carry the signal. This has not been allowed in 2 years' time, 2013, 2 years later. The same technology didn't work. It was a beacon, and the beacon very much relies on the satellite, but it needs what we call a beam area. So knowing the technology from the side of the security and the official side, they managed to jam the signal. Now, as I've said, there are other software, other technology that would allow us and help us to go live. So on my iPhone, I have an application which I can, as I said, hit, and it's something like Skype, for example, but you can do it from wherever you want, and with a very good quality as well.
Any other questions? Video. I hate to say this, lady in red there.
Welcome. My question is a general question. I want to know if you are planning to do Al Jazeera like for a French audience or like a Spanish audience, because not everybody speaks English or speaks Arabic, so we don't have your point of view in France. The next step.
Very interesting, because as I just mentioned, the Jazeera is on the expansion. Luckily enough, we're not cutting down, we're expanding, and it's definitely one of the coming steps to address the French-speaking audience. And it's a step at a time. It took us some time before we managed to launch in America, and hopefully this year and the next year in the UK. And very soon will be a French service, not only to address those who are in Europe, France, but it's probably more to focus on the North Africa, Francophone, what we call Francophone countries in Africa as well. By the way, Africa is the biggest market for Jazeera English. I think in Nigeria we're number one. Nigeria is the most populated country in Africa. We're number one. And in South Africa, we have very high rates, Kenya, and so on. So Kenya is Africa is very important for us, and for the Francophone countries, which is, I think, half of the country speaking French, is very on our radar. Next one, inshallah.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Good morning or good afternoon. You mentioned knowledge is power, and news is power. But what I think is controlling the release of news is even more powerful. And from what you've said before, like when you were in Egypt, you were reporting one perspective, but all the other broadcasters were transmitting a different perspective. What is driving that different perspective, which almost looks, it's anti-Muslim, anti-Islamic, kind of feel to it? What's driving that? What is the agenda that's making it difficult for us to get news that is consistent, true, and correct?
The agenda is to cover the news as it happened. The agenda is to challenge the dominating narrative. It's very easy to follow the steps of other media or other channels and just do the story as it appears everywhere. That's what makes it different. We do approach stories in a very different way. And in Egypt or other countries, it's so easy to give in for the challenges and the hardships you are facing when you are covering the story and say, okay, I did my best. It's much easier to get an official, have a soundbite, what we call a soundbite, which is on camera, from an official and an analyst. That's what I'm sorry to say that most of the news channels will do. They will just go for, get the story from a couple of official statements, and an analyst will sit down and say, this is what's happening in this country. We don't do that. We don't do that. We simply don't do that. We go to the, we try to get to the heart of the story, the bottom of the story. We try to figure out the best way to tell a story, rather than telling it from the perspective of the official narrative. We go for people, the average person, whether he's or she's in Cairo, in one of in Alexandria, or wherever. And we try to find out what's really happening there, how the people feel about it. And that's what gives us an edge in many areas as we do. And I very much remember in many cases we've covered stories in Myanmar. It took us a long time before we managed to even get to Myanmar. We were banned, just literally banned, we're not allowed to tell the story about the atrocities against the Muslims in Myanmar. And it took us not long time, which we didn't mind to invest in order just to get there and tell the story. Again, you as a reporter, as a correspondent, you arrive there, and this is a success in itself. I mean, it's something that you feel that you've done your best. You are there. It's so easy to go there and do a nice piece to camera with whatever background behind you and say, I'm here, this is the story. We don't do that. It took us 2 to 3 days asking our reporter on the ground to find the right story, the real story. He had to talk to a wide range of people before coming out to find his first piece on air. So it's not about just having access and taking what's in the media for granted, what the officials would say for granted. We do change this all the way. Even within our newsroom, we do have, it's a very diverse newsroom. It's I think, the makeup is of, I would say, 30, 40 nationalities in the newsroom. So you can imagine it's like a little UN newsroom. Lots of activists, by the way. On day-to-day basis, my job is to, as I said, to oversee the editorial the output, the editorial new agenda on a day-to-day basis. So I come to what we do an early meeting, editorial meeting around 9 a.m. in the morning. People start looking through the news agenda. People suggesting ideas for stories, and then you, as a news manager, I'm faced with someone, let's say, almost an activist / journalist in the newsroom, a young lady, young man, saying, why aren't we doing this story? Why can't we go and do this story? Why aren't we talk about the labor, the problems of the labor in Qatar? And he or she only sees the activist perspective. And this is part of our day-to-day thing. We have to look at the merit of the story, the news value here. So it's not only because it's a Qatar story I would do or ignore. It's about what's the news value? What's the value of a story that will make us cover the story and how we cover it? But the most important thing is not only this is the top line, what we call the top line, the headline of the story. I would say 70 to 80% of the discussion was about how are we going to cover the story, what angle are we going to take, and how we are going to challenge what has been all over the media, on the screen, on other channels. So that's what makes our job more difficult, but more interesting as well.
How much does the work of rival networks govern your choice of the news channels? If they get a scoop, do you chase that scoop as well, or how does it work?
A very good question, because it's literally a typical day-to-day thing that happens in a media. People come and say, this is a very good story, and you ask them why. It's the lead story on BBC, the lead story on CNN, and we say, okay, if this is the lead story on BBC, we shouldn't do it, because they beat us to the story. Or we should be doing the same story, unless you have a different angle, something they have missed, and you want to invest in. So we don't really take this in consideration when we are covering the story. We don't look at our competitors and say, this is the story that we should be following. I remember on the Royal Daily story here in the UK, it was the lead story in CNN, of course BBC, Sky News, everyone. It was just a small item in our bulletin towards the very bottom of it. So it's, again, it depends on our news values, how we see what makes a story, a news story is a story to us. It's not because it's all over the place in the media, it's because what value does it have to our viewers. And we do very much respect our views. We do have a lot of respect to our audience. We are not after what makes we're not an entertainment channel in a way. We see ourselves as more of an informative channel. We need to provide our audience with more information and updated details and knowledge. So that's what we do.
I'm not sure if there's any other questions. If not, I'll have one final question. Any others? No? Okay, my last question. Oh, okay, Isa. And you have 20 seconds.
Sure. I was reading some criticism a few weeks ago, and I think it's about some American newspapers when they were reporting the crisis about the deficit. The criticism was that this newspaper was too balanced. It gave one side and it gave another, but actually came out with its own opinion. I just wondered what your thoughts were on that and whether it has an impact on how you report.
It's a good question, because we in the news we tend to say that we do cover the story from different sides. We don't provide opinion. There are what we call current affairs programs and programs where you can allow for opinions. We don't believe that much in putting opinions on air. We rather, as I said, give the information, give the bits and pieces of information, put it in context. There's a big difference between, and I keep telling our journalists, our newcomers, there's a big difference between opinion and context. You tell a story within a context, with a perspective, not with an opinion. Because it's very easy for me to say, I'm Egyptian in religion, so I say, well, Sisi is doing right or wrong. It doesn't work this way. All I need to do is to say, this is what's happening, these are the facts, and this is the context of it. 2 years ago, this is how it developed. That's what we do.
Good. I think that's it. We've got the 1 minute mark. We could fill that 1 minute
Shall I sing?
I'll ask my final question then, which is, you saw Donald Rumsfeld first criticizing them, then praising you. One of the criticisms was because of the videos that your other channel used to broadcast, Al-Qaeda videos, etc. I don't know what's changed since then. Has it changed? And what different news values do Al Jazeera English has compared to the other networks, broadcast channels?
Again, I would say we haven't changed our values, the workflows or the elements that we cover in the news. So we stick to the facts as balanced as possible, covering all the angles and areas. And what I've seen, we very much like the Rumsfeld comments, because when you see him a few years ago talking about Al Jazeera as the evil network, Bin Laden's network, and a danger to the national security, and after being out of office, of course, being relaxed, looking at Al Jazeera again and saying, well, it's a news channel. It tells you all the story. It tells you that it's not about agenda here. We're not trying to advocate or promote a certain agenda here. We're covering the story as it happens, as we see it in the broader sense. It's up to you, whether as an official, an average person who's watching the news, it's up to you really to say, go and say, well, Al Jazeera is being biased on this side or that side, or being taking one of the sides. I'm pretty sure that if you the same person would think that Al Jazeera has covered the story from a certain perspective, certain angle, if they keep following the coverage of the news and the developments of the story, they will come to one conclusion. We are just covering what's happening as it goes.
Very good. Okay, well, thank you very much, Dr. Hany, and it was a very good exposition, and good luck with the note of Al Jazeera UK. Thank you.